All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go into game number 2 right now with Koss and ThorZain. It's going to be on tal'darim altar. Yummy, yummy in my tummy. Let's go ahead and get into it. 0-1. Of course, up for ThorZain. And, you know, this is a... Well, I should talk about the overall series. It's 1-1 for both of these teams. So they're looking to go towards that game point. If ThorZain wins right here, it's game point for MouseSports.
This is a pivotal match, for sure. And like I said, I mean, I think it's kind of unfortunate and fortunate for both teams. ThorZain against most players on most teams is an auto win. Cass against most players on most teams is an auto win. When they face anybody, I mean anybody could come out here. So I mean, of course, last game it was all ThorZain all day long, but this is a new game. Cass, I mean, here's the other thing to say here too. ThorZain, like, I kept looking at those harass, excuse me. I looked at the Banshee get stomped into the ground, 0 damage, and guess what? Cass was still actually in and around ThorZain's production and in economy all game long, despite constantly getting the raw end of the deal. So I mean, to say that Cass cannot match ThorZain is an absolute joke. Like, there was just a lot of things going right for ThorZain that last game. You're really interested to see if Cass makes those minor adjustments and makes this an interesting game too. You know,
Day9 has stated multiple times that Cass always feels like he just has more.
He just has
units.
more. Yeah.
He just has more stuff.
Reminds me of I Love Ooh from Brood War.
Yes, exactly. And it's just like superior mechanics. It's just great overall fundamentals. You are able to execute when you need to execute. And that's why Cass always seems to edge out that little tiny bit.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, too. Not to get too far into this debate because this is just murky waters, but as a North American player, when I went to Home Story Cup and I spoke with a lot of the European players, I feel like they take the academic stage of this game a lot further than we as North American players do. Like, Cass is not just some kind of savant who sits down and just knows when to make stuff. He's actually timed it down. He's worked it out. He's all the concepts in terms of where you should have SCVs win, all that good stuff. He's got that down to a science. And that's something you can actually say about European players, is they'll sit down and they'll do the boring side of StarCraft 2 ad nauseum so that they can maximize their potential for that in gameplay. And I think that's reflected by just how well a player like Cass manages his economy.
It's so important to actually do that. Go sit down. If you want to make a build, you have to reverse engineer it. So let's say you need, you know, let's just say 8-minute turrets.
Right.
8-minute turrets. Well, you should know 35 seconds for an engineering bay, 25 seconds for a turret. So you need a full minute to start that engineering bay at 7 minutes. You should be A-okay for that. That's the type of stuff that you need to do. And that's something that Europeans are really known for doing, I think. Just creating really, really tight builds and having it be brutally efficient.
Yep. And if you look at that production tab, actually both of them are eerily doing the same thing. And I mean it. Almost everything is pairing up exactly. The slight difference here is Cass is moving on up to 3 barracks a little bit faster, which does, I think it at least suggests Marine Marauder play. Sometimes players actually just go pure Marine and then follow it up with tanks, sometimes fast upgrades or medevacs. I'll be kind of interested to see where he goes with that. I know that his Marine tank play is extremely strong, and not just by last game, but I actually watch a lot of Cass games. I'm a big fan. He's one of the best Terran players out there. Plays a really exciting brand now. ThorZain on the other side, there's his 3rd barracks. So maybe it's just different paths, the same mountain peak. We'll have to wait and see. Income tab shows, again, just a slight difference. ThorZain with 1 SCV more, but again, it's just a fraction of an SCV. And, okay, here's the difference. ThorZain combat shield, Cass stim. So slight difference. Gretorp is a Terran player. Why would you go one over the other?
Combat shields is normally to do some sort of timing, especially if you go a tech route, something like Siege Tanks, Banshees. It comes at a very inconvenient time when you really don't expect any form of pressure to be coming up here. You know, you don't normally go siege mode. You're getting Banshees, you're trying to do a harass. So combat shields will pop out, and then you can defend, #1, against any Banshee, you know, kind of shenanigans. And you can also do a lot of pressure when your opponent doesn't really have the capabilities of having nearly that many Marines nor the upgrades. Stim is actually used. It's probably you know, a little bit. Well,
is it more offensive or defensive, you think?
I don't know, man.
Okay.
I think overall I do like combat shields because it's just so much more
utility,
accessible.
I feel.
Yes,
yeah.
yes. Stim, it's like a very small chance, like okay, maybe a Banshee, and you're
Yeah, okay.
Or you have just superior numbers and your opponent is playing a little bit too cheeky, pushing up, and you're going to punish. But overall, I think combat shields is the better way to go, both offensively and defensively. It's just safer.
A couple interesting things here, Gretorp. ThorZain's actually not scout at all. He does control both his towers. And he threw a depot down by his third. You might look at that and say, well, why would you put a depot there? It spots drops, Banshee play, perhaps. And if you look inside his main, that theme is being repeated. So there's actually a depot on the left side of his main base, overlooking that cliff for the same purpose. So ThorZain's actually, kind of like we talked about in previous matches, he's not concerned with scouting out his opponent as much as having an answer for everything. And be that as it is, I really like what I'm seeing from Kaz. That's a super fast third. And if that doesn't get scouted, the timing for that to be punished is extremely minuscule. And if you get a faster third in a mirror matchup, or just a better economy in general, you're obviously in a very privileged position.
Ooh, and it looks like ThorZain will go on to scout this out. Now, this actually works out fairly well just because they're in cross positions. It does take a little bit longer, but if somehow ThorZain does get the aggressive stance and is able to take his opponent's 2 Xel'Naga towers, then you're going to be looking at a lot of early game aggression. You can see already Starboard Tech is coming out here, whereas we just have the factory coming out. You can see that the difference in tech. One person's going for tech, other person's going for an expansion. So can Kaz actually defend against this pressure, hold it out long enough to have that one base materialized, or will ThorZain be able to do a little bit of damage to his opponent and obviously punish the opponent for getting such a quick command center?
Both players will have +1 attack, so that's where they whitewash. Both players will have 3 barracks. The difference here is going to, of course, be the 2 medevacs for ThorZain, and that's in lieu of his very much so slower command center, which just now went down at the third. So they're both going to have stim. They're both going to have combat shields, very much so similar that way. If anything starts to divide the two, it's this. ThorZain's going to have to attack up a ramp against what should be a concave Terran player. And even just that first couple of volleys, but the more important thing here is that attack surface. I feel like that's all it takes for Cass, who will not have medevacs out, if this attack does go through, to actually hold off the attack.
Now, I do have to say there is continuation to this. ThorZain also has his tech advantage in the siege tank count. So if, you know, these Marines fail, if they fail completely, then yeah, ThorZain's in a lot of trouble. But if they don't do, you know, just don't do anything too much, he still will have that siege tank timing to do a little bit.
Well, Cass is actually going to have medevacs here too. So on the left side, ThorZain's scouting. He's not going to see a big Terran army, so he should be like, okay. Well, no, he's thought about it, but then he pulled back. The other army, or excuse me, the other Marine did scout out a giant Marine mass up into the natural. Now, Units tab shows something interesting. 53 green Marines, 55 now, versus 49, 50, 51 of Cass. So they're actually, Gretorp, this is almost scary. At the 12-ish minute mark, they both have just about the same exact stuff.
One siege tank piece. I think ThorZain wasn't totally committing on those siege tanks, even though he had, I know, the factory and the tech lab up much faster. So kind of a shame, but ThorZain, he might be behind just on the sheer fact that that third was able to stay up.
Double drop at the natural, Gretorp.
Oh.
And Cass is preoccupied with a smaller army in the middle of the map. But this is so much damage. Income tab, or excuse me, workers lost shows 10 SCVs down. Now focusing on the orbital command. Tank does siege. Is he going to get the orbital? I think he will, though. And he does. Wow.
That should not have happened. I was just about to be very critical on ThorZain, saying, hey, he should have taken out those 2 refiners. That would have been a lot better, because the orbital command center, it's so easy to actually go and repair it and just clamp down on that, that expansion. But very, very off play from Kaz. He's going to go so far behind. Now that obviously
dropping the main again. ThorZain never letting up. Going to focus down on that reactor, and there's no chance for that to be saved. That's actually a pretty big win there as well. Meanwhile, Cass is saying, you know what, that's just a single drop. I'm not going to worry about it. I need to get some damage in. I got to do it now. Pushing off, even with an SCV. Unfortunately, it has a lunch pail of gas. Needs to go home and return that to the masses. Natural is being rebuilt, but Cass is on the warpath. And again, if you look at that unit tab, 76 Marines, 2 tanks for Cass with 4 medevacs versus just the 60 Marines of ThorZain. But those numbers are changing right now as tanks are getting the first shots on Cass.
That's not good. Of course, with that, Xel'Naga tower, he's able to spot out those siege tanks and actually picks one of them off. Really not good. at all. ThorZain's going to try to just keep up with these Marines. Let's look at the... Oh, here we go, actually. And Koss will push in onto this. Is it going to be enough? The lines have been drawn, but 3 siege tanks for ThorZain does help out quite a bit. It looks like after the dust has settled,
it's looking like it's going to end up being pretty close to an even trade, but actually the deceiving thing here is that Cass had about 10 to 15 more Marines going into that, and he kills 1 tank an equal number of, well, actually sub-equal number of Marines of ThorZain. So while both players battered each other's noses there, it's ThorZain that has the slightly less bleeding nose.
Yeah, don't forget ThorZain did take out that Orbital Command Center at the natural, just now being merged into an OC. So it's still a little bit before 3 mules are capable. You see in the unit step 5 mules over there, so that helps out a lot with the income. Let's check that out right now. 45 to 62, a big advantage for ThorZain. ThorZain, I think he's just going to mass and keep doing it.
Yep.
And if he does that, I mean, what can Koss actually do? He's going to be out macroed every single time because the sheer production and the income of ThorZain.
Well, I mean, it comes down to a couple things. Like, you want to be ahead in upgrades, and that's to a certain extent what we have here, but ThorZain's like literally 45 seconds behind, so no big freaking deal at all. Drops are the other way you get back into this, but if you look at ThorZain's base, once again, his rally, I mean, he's actually got Marines re-entering his base to make sure he's safe from just that. I mean, ThorZain doesn't really make you feel comfortable that you can do anything, and that's part of what makes him such a dangerous player. A drop would actually be really powerful against him because his army is in the middle of the map, and there are no missile turrets, but I don't think Cass thinks he can afford it because he feels probably like if he picks up anything from this disadvantaged standpoint that he would actually probably just go on to die from a counterattack.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, Koss is right now put in a position where it's like he's scrambling for units. That's the only thing he can do. And I think if ThorZain, look at this, he's actually going to try to take this position. He's doing it so slowly. But, you know, taking a Xel'Naga tower would be gigantic of him. If he's able to do that, he obviously puts his foot on the back foot. It stops expansions from going up, and I think ThorZain could probably increase his lead and just continue command center production. There we have it. In the bottom middle, he is looking like he wants to go lift that over as soon as he finishes.
I think that is the plan. There's actually Marines already there to make sure that that base is not getting scouted while he does that. Now, I was talking about how ThorZain could be susceptible to missile turrets, but if you look around, they're starting to actually go up. And this is so smart. He knows now that he's way ahead. So what's one of the only ways a Terran player can lose from this position? It's positioning, but then it's also drop play. And ThorZain's not going to give him the chance. In fact, will this 4th become a planetary fortress? I would love to see that. Even though he's way, way ahead, I feel like a planetary fortress is one of the ways you can secure that.
There you go.
There it is.
So smart.
Double drop 12 o'clock, I think. And that's going to be inconvenient because if you look, Cass is like, okay, I'll stare down my opponent. Let's try to do a toe-to-toe. He's going to go for it. These tanks have been left behind, getting lots of kills on those Marines, but it's not enough. They do get cleaned up. Now, the rest of ThorZain's army has actually made its way over to this natural spot. And that's actually almost like a distraction because we have a double drop in the main.
Yeah, and he's going to try to chase there. I'm not sure exactly what he wants to do. He needs to be careful because I think he knows there could potentially be units on that top ground. But here we go. The Marines are pushing in here. Stutter stepping, killing a ton of SCVs. SCVs aren't even being taken off.
Being pulled.
Oh, and taking out the engineering base. Beautiful. You should take out the Spidey Bulwarks too. I would love to take out the armor and the engineering bay, but good job. He's just going to back up, regroup all of his units on the ground, and it looks like he's going to push in pretty soon. Yeah.
And ThorZain, I mean, again, he's not actually really saturating that 4th, but it'll soon be saturated. We have a swell of SCVs making their way over there. Cass, he's down 30 supply income tab. He's down 11 harvesters. His main's in shambles, so there's things like one of the gases not being mined properly. The other one only has 2 SCVs on. I mean, Cass very much so has this feel of a guy who's getting kind of beaten around. Like if these were 2 boxers, one guy goes to the corner with his entire face swollen shut. That would be Cass. The other guy's ThorZain, who's bouncing around, raising his arm. He's pretty happy so far.
See, this drop is going to continue on over here on the left-hand side. The Orbital Command Center was actually targeted down. Kind of a weird decision to do that. But in the meantime, those siege tanks and Marines in the middle of the map just sharking around, trying to find a good opening on his opponent. Obviously, wants to take out that natural because it's super accessible from that low ground, but for now, I think he needs to just chill out. He could even do a Doom drop in the main. I think that would probably be one of the toughest positions for Koss to be in. But for now...
ThorZain moves down. If there's ever a time to attack, it would have been that. But of course, now with the tank sieging, actually, there's still an opportunity here. Cass does push forward. Good spread on his Marines. And he's going to come out way ahead, I think. But those tanks doing so much damage. No, it's the Marines stepping forward, starting to clean up those tanks. They did get a little bit clumped up there, taking a lot of damage. And look at that. Because of that clumping, actually 3 tanks stand here for ThorZain. And I feel like with more diligent micro, this pseudo win for Cass should have been a resounding victory right there.
Yeah, you have to agree with that. I mean, he didn't stagger his Marines up. ThorZain is definitely a player that's known for that. I think it was actually spotlighted in the NASL Season 2 finals. And he's able to do that really well. Koss, not so much. Grouping up the Marines allows those siege tanks to do so much damage. Now this third, I mean, ThorZain is all over these expansions consistently. And there you go. All that has to do is go down.
They're all dead.
Command Center. Yep, it's absolutely dead. This other Oval Command Center might actually be dead as well. No, Koss is able to get back in time. Takes out all of these Marines.
Oh my gosh.
No, he doesn't. And now,
can't even kill those.
This is when StarCraft Masters becomes really important, except instead of a Stalker, you have to deal with the Marines. Nope. GG.
Let's rewind this a little bit. Let's go back in the game real quick. I think we actually missed something. Go to like 22-20 and look at this drop on the entire army of Cass. He's got all his tanks in the middle of the map. ThorZain's pulling up here. ThorZain's way ahead in supply, and that's largely in part because he just got done trashing the third. Loads his whole army up into medevacs, counts on there being no Marines here, scans to make sure that is the case, and then watch this play. I mean, does he win without that? Absolutely. But that's the kind of stuff that makes ThorZain, in my opinion, one of the best players on the planet. He's harassing all the time. Okay, that's why they call him a spoon Terran. But then he's also taking spoons and sometimes shovels out of your entire army. If you give him the opportunity, he will take it. Absolutely.
It's just terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. If you are the opponent of ThorZain, you see stuff like that, that speaks for itself. And ladies and gentlemen, that puts Mouz up 2-1 in this clan war. So we're going to go into game 1 of match number 4 in a little bit. We'll be featuring 2 really, really strong players that I'm so excited to actually be seeing. It is none other than Mana and Happy. Really excited for it. TVP, don't go anywhere. We'll be back after this break.